to the secretary, to the CDC director with the supporting documents of those. We only sent her 10 of them. We get you. But anyway, so that's one point. So no, okay, we're not going to do this. We're not going to talk on each other. If you guys want to talk on top of each other, I'm not going to stick around. Okay? It's a waste of time for you to talk on top of each other. All right? So you'll get your chance though, honest to goodness. So it obviously it's a slap in the face of those people that already have natural immunity. No. Second of all, it's a huge economic harm to this country. Yours is not unique. I can't really begin to tell you how many businesses have called me the same situation. A third of the workers on an aerospace manufacturer, the same situation. So it's going to be a huge economic impact. I think it's unconstitutional. The clarity, of course, we're waiting for the White House to give us that clarity. This is all on the back of the White House, another crisis that he's created. And the last thing it's going to do is inflation. It's only going to add to inflation. It's going to create a bottleneck in whatever it is that you all do, whatever it's going to create a bottleneck, right? So there's going to be less of those supplies out there. There's going to be less supplies out there that's going to drive the price of those goods and services up. So we'll go with.
Look, just real quick. So what I'd like to address is why is it on the back of small business on this? Why did the business, if the government wants everyone to be vaccinated, that's one thing. But why is it the business people that have to go in and do that? I just think it's grossly unfair, and that the businesses are going to be fined.
14,000?
70,000.
70,000. Right. So all I can say is I feel your pain. We're doing everything. I've been offered another amendment to the Senate continuing resolution that every Democrat voted against and every Republican voted for to stop this mandate. We'll go in the back with your hand.
I have a question overall. So our goal is herd immunity, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So herd immunity. If I want to know if we have herd immunity, although I'm fully vaccinated, so my husband is, why would we not invest in antibody tests for people? Because our goal is to know. We may have a totally different response to the vaccine. Mine may be different than my husband's, and so may the whole room. So why would we not? It's about what, $40 or something for an a test for antibodies. Why, if that's our goal, instead of mandating vaccines, wouldn't we mandate or just say everybody be tested? A COVID test only lasts for that particular time. I may come in contact with someone else the next minute, okay? But that would give us a baseline for everyone, and then we would know who needs to have it, who needs a booster, because we would also know who has natural immunity, and we wouldn't waste vaccines on people that don't need it, and we can send it to people that do. That's my question.
So again, I wish CDC director was here to give you a better answer than I can give you. To me, it's absolutely a lack of common sense. I've been pushing for a T-cell test since I think February or March. It's available to not just test antibody levels, but also your T-cell immunity as well. So I'm with you. Half of the people that have not been vaccinated will have immunity. So that takes care of half the problem. All I can say is I agree with you. Let's go over to this side. Yes, sir, with the hat on.
I'm Dr. Steve Wilson. I'm a veterinarian. I'm a large animal veterinarian. I graduated in '77
From?
Bay State, and I went to Minnesota to actually be a veterinarian. But I had 20-some years of large animal practice. The basis of all that stuff is vaccination. I spent 6 years as a federal veterinarian at APHIS. I spent 2 weeks at the Foreign Animal Disease Center in Long Island, Plum Island, and all your facts you're presenting are totally bogus. This lady over here is not good, yours are not good, and so that's all I have to say. You're basing everything on your doctor doesn't make you an immunologist. So you're a gynecologist, you had some education, but your facts.
Which facts would you disagree with?
Pretty much all of yours.
Give me one specific one.
The natural immunity is consistent. Well,
Consistent.
If you've been sick, there's a lot of people get sick and they think they've had so they have natural immunity. The immunity, your shots are based on the dose. Your natural immunity is going to be based on the dose, and so
Yeah,
That's
you know,
the
I just
beginning
would
of
have
all.
to Respectfully, we disagree, and I just would encourage you to look at all the signs that I've
I
looked
doubt.
at. I doubt it, I really,
spent
but anyway, I
37
respect where you're
years
coming
in-
from,
in
I've talked to
dealing
veterinarians,
with-
thank you.
So, yes, thank
We're
you
good,
too.
thank you, go ahead.
First of all, thank you for trying to fix the foster care system and putting a grant into it. That's wonderful. I have friends who have, through circumstances, have lost their children to the foster care system, and they will not be told where their children are. They have a child that has been in the foster care system for over a year and another for several months. No one will tell them where they are. As far as violence in this country, violence in this town involves homeless people walking around with sticks, and no one will take them away from them. I'm told on the West Coast that will not happen. That when a homeless person or any person walks down the street with a stick and a police officer sees it, that ends right there. In this town, I personally, folks, have been chased by a man with any number of sticks for weeks. And when he caught me a week ago with a 20-inch, 20-pound pipe, chased me into the drive-thru of a McDonald's with dozens of people watching, and I'm screaming, 911, 911, he's been at this for weeks, get him off of me. I take him down, I get the pipe away from him, and the liberals in this town, let him up, you're hurting him.
Sure.
I'm screaming again and again, he's been at this for weeks, get the cops, get him here, get him here. And when it's all said and done, he runs a block away behind a liquor store. So for the 1000th time, I see him leaving, and I run after him so I can point to the cops where he's at.
And they won't
You're not gonna
prosecute him.
believe this. This is how this ends. This is how this ends. They lock him up. Great, super. I scream yes. They take me back to get my things. Now, number one, that 20-pound pipe, this is the second time I've been assaulted by a stick. Second time, cops took a picture and left it there. They left Gal Rutz there. They left the 20-pound pipe there. I said, gentlemen, you want to take this for evidence? No, we took the picture. So I kept it. I have a friend who's got that pipe now. And
Question?
last thing. Cops said, just one more thing before you leave. Don't ever go to that liquor store that you were chasing your killer past. I said, what are you talking about? The liquor store doesn't want you around there, homeless guy. I said, good. Next time I have a killer chasing me, I'll make sure he runs towards Casey's. Or I'll run towards Casey's and he'll get away. Good luck catching him.
Thank you, yes ma'am, go ahead.
My name is Pat Bates, and I don't know if you're aware on the CDC website, they talk about COVID-19, and they have what's called operational considerations for humanitarian settings. I don't know if you're aware of this, so I want to know what you're going to do to protect us against this. If you look on their website, because I just brought it up, they talk about the shielding approach. I'm upset, and that's why I'm having trouble speaking. The shielding approach aims to reduce the number of severe COVID cases by limiting contact. They're talking about camps. They want it, current evidence indicates older Americans and people of serious age. Anyhow, it talks on and on about camps. We've seen what's happened in New York. We've seen the gradual
Australia.
and here in the States, in
Yes.
Canada. And what I'm worried about is we say, oh, it can't happen here. I want to know look on the site, look on the CDC
Okay.
site. It's scary, and it's happening in Canada.
What scares you the most about it?
I'm not vaccinated. I don't ever plan on being vaccinated. I don't believe in it.
Right.
I'm healthy. I've
So
lived
how does
a
that,
healthy life.
how does that impact you?
Because I'm elderly. I'm 73, and they're going to put me in a fucking camp. And I'm not going, and I'm taking out my guns, and they will not put me in a camp. What I'm worried about is to be aware of this and make sure that this is not going to happen, because it's gradually encroaching on our freedoms.
Thank you for your comments. Certainly, I think everyone knows how hard I'm pushing back on the CDC these days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's go back to this side. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Amy Castle, and I teach constitutional law at KU. And a century ago, the Supreme Court said that vaccine mandates were constitutional, so
You know, I think it's a 10th Amendment issue. I think it's unconstitutional for the federal government to make a vaccine mandate.
But what provision of the Constitution do you believe that violates?
Listen, I think it's against the 10th Amendment. I don't pretend to be a constitutional lawyer. But certainly I've read the Constitution, and the 10th Amendment says that it protects the states. That is absolutely the federal government overreach. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Katie Master-Simone. I'm an 8th grader at Bishop Seabury Academy, and I started the climate club there.
The what?
The climate club, yeah.
Right.
So, it said on your little sheet that you're fighting to help, like, stop the crisis, but I'm reading this quote by you a few years ago, and you said this to KSN TV. I'm not sure that there even is climate change, so would you like to change that statement now, or do you still support that?
This is what I can tell you. I want to leave this world cleaner, healthier, and safer than it's ever been before. And we're going to do that through our innovation and not through government rules. And I think there's so many opportunities out there. I'm very committed to making the environment better. You know, I planted over 20,000 trees. I've done lots of wetland restorations as well. And I've been a big advocate for biofuels. If we went to E15 around the world, it would cut the emission, the tailpipe emissions in half. Across the state, this state is so much involved in biodiesel and renewable diesels as well. That's going to cut back the carbon footprint. This nation's at a 25-year low. It's 14% less today than it was a decade ago. So we are leading, and I'm going to keep leading that battle.
What changed? You said there was no climate control problem, and now you're a challenge or a champion for it. So what changed?
You know, nothing's changed. I think it's always the way the perception of the media.
Okay.
And when you
Well,
get to Congress, and
Yeah,
I
the
think
media
even
is
just
the virus.
the term climate change, what does that mean? Is that it's different meanings, but no one's going to fight harder for the environment than I am. I'm going to say one last thing about it, though. So I'm certainly in favor of new, green, clean energies that are affordable, but I'm also in favor of taking traditional energies and making them cleaner.
No.
So I think that there's a way to do all this.
They
Yeah.
cannot be cleaner. No.
As a physician, I'd like to know your opinion on putting masks on 2 through 11-year-old children who have no voice to vote, they have no right to stand on, and their parents are having their rights taken away by the Douglas County Commissioners, who have mandated through December 22nd that our 2 through 11-year-olds, think of that, 2 through 11-year-olds wear a mask on their face all day long. There's been a viral video where little Mason had a mask placed over his face repeatedly, and he's crying and saying, no, no. There's been a case on an airplane where a 2-year-old with asthma has been taken off the plane because he wouldn't wear, his mother wasn't able to keep a mask in front of his face. What is your medical opinion on masking children ages 2 through 11? Thank you.
You bet. So I'm a senator and a doctor. I believe in local control, first of all. I think that those decisions should be made locally. I think that's real important.
Your medical opinion.
Okay, I'm getting there. Okay. And then beyond that, again, half of those children are already immune.
Correct.
So the ones that are immune, there's absolutely no studies that would support wearing masks after you're already immune to this virus, right? So I think certainly that those half of people, it's ridiculous. I asked the CDC the same question. They sent me 88 studies. I read all 88 of those. Only 2 of them were slightly suggestive that it would help. The rest of them, opening windows in the schoolroom did as much as the mask did as well. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old grandson. They can't wear a mask, right? In a perfect world, for my parents that are going to slip out to Brahms and get a gallon of milk and a pound of bacon once a week, I think maybe there's some benefit to that. But for children that are interacting through the day, do we really think while we're eating lunch the virus suddenly stops, or when we walk into the restroom, you don't
Thank
think
you.
these kids are taking their masks off? It's amazing to do, especially being outdoors. Way
Yes.
back, over a year ago, I was making phone calls to people that had construction crews outside before vaccines, before anything. None of them had a major outbreak, right? We've had the NFL and the NCAA football open for 3 weeks, no super spreader events. So I don't see the benefits, but what we do know is there's harm. We do know that there's harm.
Hypoxia.
The psychological, the psychosocial development of our children are harmed by these masks. Okay? Yeah, let's see it. Oh my gosh. So many people. It's over here. Right.
My name is Chris Heineke, and I am from Lawrence, and my husband was at KU. I'm in the special department, and has brought millions of dollars.
Speak up. Speak up, we can't hear you.
Let him repeat the question.
And I am from Lawrence, and my husband works at KU. We've got 4 kids here. We've been here. We're not native. We've been here about 22 years. And I have a couple of questions. One is I just want to, I've been saying prayers for Chris Burnett, who's the Old at East football coach. He left this world from his wife and 4 children 2 weeks ago when you were at He was unvaccinated, and he was going to be vaccinated.
He was going what?
Hospital with COVID for 2 weeks. And his father begged him to get vaccinated, but he said he didn't really believe it was working. So that's one thing. The other thing, let's just totally shift gears, and we got your postcard or your mailer in the mail a couple days ago. And there's a lot of things on this list, that I could take issue with. But the one thing this talks about is protecting Kansas values. And I'm wondering if honesty is a Kansas value. I'd like to start with something really simple. I'm not gonna go into continuing about COVID.
What's your question?
It says that in protecting Kansas values, the hard work that you've been putting in this year includes passing a resolution which designated June 2021 as National Dairy Month. And there's even a press release given saying that you worked with Senator Klobuchar and Sinema and filing
Did you have a
500
point?
Democrats. It's been National Dairy Month in this country, and you know it, and everyone knows it. It's kind of like the turkey, pardoning the turkey in November, right? It's been National Dairy Month since 1937.
What's your question?
He lied about National Dairy Month, not National Dairy Month.
Okay, let's get to a real issue.
I want to clarify one thing though, okay? I've been vaccinated, my parents have been vaccinated, my brother and sister are vaccinated. I've been fighting since March, April for the CDC to approve the booster shot. But it's your choice. It is absolutely your choice, okay?
Thank you.
It
It's
is
our
absolutely
choice.
Your choice. But this virus disproportionately impacts seniors and people with underlying health care problems. It has minimal impact on our children. So I am in favor of the vaccines. I want that to be on the record, but it has to be a personal choice. So all the way
Thank
back.
you.
Yeah.
My name is John Wilson. I live here in Lawrence and I'm the father of 2 small children. And I have a question about child care. In Kansas, the average cost of care for infants is $935 a month. Yet, the average wages for child care workers and educators is a little under $10 an hour. What is your plan to make child care more affordable for families like mine?
Yeah. So the question's about childcare. So first of all, worked really hard 2017-18 to double the child tax credit. So that was passed. So that was the first doubling. What I've tried to do is go across the state and figure out what's working and what's not. And probably the best example I'm seeing are co-ops, as opposed to a government one-size-fits-all, but local communities solving the problem. So at the Salina YMCA, the facility was sitting there underutilized during the day, and they started a child care center there, and I love the recreational part of that. I think the kids need to be doing more than sitting there watching a videotape. So there's so many PE type of activities for them there as well. But the co-op concept is that if what a beautiful new hospital you've got here. So if Lawrence Hospital would just reserve like 20, am I not going fast enough?
Yeah, you're not answering his question.
Yeah, I am, absolutely.
He's talking about co-ops and local change, not federal.
I'm absolutely answering the question. It may not be the way you want me to answer, but anyway. So they would reserve like 5 or 10 spots, and maybe the university would reserve 30 spots and try to give them some stability. But it is a challenge, and it's been a challenge, probably the greatest challenge of my marriage. was having 2 kids, 6 and 2, and I was working 100 hours a week, and my wife was working in a NICU pediatric intensive care unit as well. So those are a couple of thoughts. Go ahead, sir.
Senator, if I can just say that
Yeah.
we can't get the economy going again without childcare. We can't get people back to work. And there's a plan in front of us now that can fund $450 billion to support locally driven solutions to childcare. It's in the reconciliation packages. I would just ask that, to the extent possible, you support the childcare elements of federal legislation.
Dan Huffman. My question is, and there's obviously a lot of things right now that as a representative, a senator, you're dealing with which are controversial and I'd say even difficult to resolve. But something that I don't feel is that difficult to resolve if you're a leader are the actions on January 6th.
Yeah.
I don't care what party you're for. Those actions were horrific, in my opinion. And the individual who's most
I know.
in my mind for that particular set of actions is still the leading voice in your party. And he's a criminal. His sense of morality, I think he defines the moral.
What's your question?
Even, pardon the interruption. So I'd like to hear your opinion on that day, the actions of our quote chief executive that day, and wonder why your party has not taken that action.
What about your party?
How about that?
So I think I've been on record multiple times saying that January 6th was a horrible day for this country. I've condemned all the violence of that day.
And this,
What about the BLM violence?
Let me finish.
I don't think so.
Let me
Was
finish.
it legitimate for him to try to be our president when he wasn't?
Okay.
Oh, shut up.
He was our president on January 6th.
Bring it together. I appreciate the enthusiasm. So there's been, I think, 12 investigations, hearings on this. I think it's been well played out. Meanwhile, there's violence across the entire country with all
Yes.
these riots.
Yes.
As well. So I condemn all the violence. It's now, what is this month? It's October. So I'm trying to stay focused on protecting our God-given constitutional rights, saving this economy
Thank
from
you.
a $7 trillion
How big, Mom?
I want to know what I connected this, because it seems like it does have good results, but yet we're banned from having it. I mean, people get it, but it's really hard to get, and physicians won't distribute it, they won't prescribe it, the pharmacies won't dispense it. But if you read studies, it does seem like it has a benefit if taken very early on when you first start getting the symptoms.
So are there questions about ivermectin? What do I think of it? First of all, don't take coarse ivermectin. Seriously, it'll kill you, okay?
Of course.
So I think that's a given. I believe in the sanctity of the physician-patient relationship. And many times as a physician, we would take medicines and use them off-label. So it's not black or white. Ivermectin is not black or white. There are a lot of studies starting to come out now suggesting it could be helpful if used early on. My big thrust with the CDC is why aren't we doing studies on generic drugs like this? Because Big Pharma is not going to do a study to repurpose a drug like this. It's very expensive, and it might take $1 billion and 5 years to repurpose a drug, maybe 10 years as well. The 7th piece of legislation that President Biden signed was legislation we wrote that would help generics and biosimilars get to market sooner. Go ahead.
Excuse me, sir. This ivermectin thing, I'm a veterinarian. I know totally. You want to push ivermectin? I will. So, this is bullshit. You know it.
Oh, you're not that. So sit down and go to 3 horse.
He's just a goddamn cat fool.
Oh my gosh.
This is a waste of time. Huh?
I wasn't expecting all this.
Oh, I knew this was a waste of time.
And there's somebody who lives here.
I saw that.
I did too.
Watch out for the
I knew they were coming.
posing.
That is on their site, that's required.
I'm not aware of that, but I am very concerned about the people crossing our border, the folks coming across
All right, I actually disagree a lot with people about drugs, but hey, that's another thing. My question goes back to your comparison of yourself with President Eisenhower. President Eisenhower was a great man, and he actually, under his administration, fostered a good infrastructure for the highway system. My question is, why did you vote against an infrastructure plan that would help, whatever they believe, all these people? You talk about inflation. Our supply chain is a mess. And a lot of that has to do with poor port development, highways, people who have retired from their work because COVID is like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. So why did you vote against something that was so important to Kansas, whether they're Republican, Democrat, or independent?
So I appreciate you guys. How many people in the room would be in favor of taking money from Medicare to pay for infrastructure? Would be in favor of taking money from Medicare to pay for infrastructure? That's what this legislation did, and that's just the start of it, right? So it was a $1.2 trillion bill, and only 10% of it going towards classic roads and bridges. They might as well call this the Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer legislation.
Yes.
What's being spent in their states on mass transit that's always been upside down financially and will continue to be upside down. So I agree on the same goal. I agree that we should be investing in infrastructure, but I want the money to really go towards classical infrastructure.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you. Let's go, lady with the striped shirt on. It's in really good shape. Wow.
What the government is going to do about the underlying condition that has put us in this position in the first place is the unhealthiness of this country. 12% of this country is metabolically healthy. 12%. That's why this virus took hold. That's why we're all getting sick. This beautiful facility that we're in right now is sitting empty. We're not having games here. We're not having tournaments here. Obesity is one of the highest indicators of a bad reaction with COVID. Low levels of vitamin D. These are simple things. When I go to the grocery store, everybody has masks on, and I forget what they call it, but the place where you walk through that has all the impulse buying is nothing but honey buns and horrible foods. Why are we not putting emphasis on health? Health is not in a vaccine. Health is not in staying 6 feet apart. Health is not in a mask. We need to concentrate on the health of this country.
It amazes me the good common sense that I hear today. And I'm as frustrated as you are. Here we are a year and 10 months into this virus. And all we have is for a solution is a vaccine. You know, the old saying, if all you have is a hammer, all you see are nails out there. But you're absolutely right. Gosh, in March of 2020, I went and volunteered at an ICU and an ER in Liberal, Kansas. Walked into the ICU. They had like 8 beds, but 13 patients, 11 of the 13, 50-year-old men with type 2 diabetes. And right then I picked up the phone, I called the CDC and said, hey, this virus is going to disproportionately attack people with type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, and it's interesting, all the generic drugs that are working have some type of lipolysis side effect with them as well. So you're spot on, and you sit here and wonder, why is the mortality higher in America in this virus than some other countries?
Because we're fat.
There we go. There we go. Yeah. You had your hand up several times, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I don't even know what to speak to it exactly.
we're in through a million different things here. In 2017, just a year after I spent a year debating with my father, Kasich, Trump, who are we going to fight for? And I learned there's no talking someone out of their stance. They're going to believe what they're going to believe. And one thing I would ask that we all just stop yelling over each other, please. But my dad and I had a lot of debates, and I lost him that year. It made me think a lot about what we're doing, but also what it really means to leave your legacy. To be a leader, you have every chance in the world to make so much more difference than any of us in here do. Please, sir, do things that make our lives better. I do know that with what you mentioned, we had a chance to vote for an infrastructure bill that 2 Republican senators from North Dakota, who just overtook us as the #1 wheat producing state. I'm a farmer. I can't make my living by being a farmer right now. My wife has worked as a daycare worker for 23 years. It is expensive to send your kids to daycare, and yet she has to find girls who will work for her for under $10 an hour, and she can't do it right now. It is nearly impossible to follow the rules, to have the right quotas. That also, I've watched 3 kids in her room, whether their families practiced it or not, children who did get COVID, and it was scary to watch people get COVID, to watch some of our workers get COVID. Some of these people who their parents don't help them, and they are living with foster people, and they said, you got COVID, get out of my house, and they became homeless. There are some huge, huge problems that have happened. I cannot tell you I have a solution. I don't think any of us do. I think we have to learn that we can talk to each other, please. That will be one giant first step. I hate that we turn on, I'm going to specifically say just news, and it has a lot of talking at the other person rather than to the other person. I have so much faith that it's not come through. I thought that, honestly, changing our Republican president would change the way our Republican Party has acted. I don't know that it has. I really want us to, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little trembly. I want us to find a way to make things better.
Thank you.
I guess I can't say the rest of what I would say right now, sir. But doubling the child care, I wish if we spoke, we also spoke with specifics. Don't use terms like this is just the Pelosi talk, because that's just a person. That is not an ideology. Spouting things that say communist, Marxism, Nazism, whatever the hell at the end, that doesn't prove a point in any ways whatsoever. My child goes to a socialist school, Lawrence High School. And I like it because it's available. If it isn't a socialist school that was available, he would be paying to go to a daycare, which he still does, and I pay for the after school.
Thank you.
Then the last part is, we do have a vaccine, I understand what you're saying, and it came from Operation Warp Speed, which actually was a socialist procedure, and that's how we came up with this vaccine, was our government paid for it to become. I just wish we don't have to add tags to win an argument, because we don't want to face whether the thing was a real amount. Doubling the child care amount to $350 pays for 1/3 of 1 month of what that gentleman's talking about to pay for that kid. So if the government paid for 1/36 of his kid's daycare for the month or for the year, it doesn't go very far, and it doesn't really keep his kid in the school. I appreciate it. I would love to maybe talk later after everyone's had a chance. I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you for coming to Lawrence today.
You bet. Go ahead.
Okay, so.
Speak up.
Okay. Do you think the mainstream media needs to be held accountable for anything they say? Be it Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, like all of it, even Newsmax?
So his question is, do I think that the mainstream media should be held accountable
For just anything.
for anything? So certainly I'm going to defend the Constitution, defend their First Amendment right to speak. I'm certainly against censoring. That's probably my biggest concern, being censored on social media, especially conservative thought. And we do need to probably repeal the Section 230. Yeah, Facebook. Those folks need to decide which are they the public square or are they an editor as well. So I think that we have whatever laws and precedent we have in place now. If those things that they're saying are untruth, then there's opportunities for people to sue them.
We need to reinstate the fairness doctrine.
Okay.
I also have another question.
Okay, real quick, Gwen.
Do you believe that nuclear energy would be a sustainable source for the environment in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess the question is, do I believe nuclear energy would be a
And I'm not talking about in like the corporate aspect that many people would think it's like a Mr. Burns evil thing.
Enough with
I
that.
think nuclear energy definitely could potentially work. It's just not a lot of people believe it does.
Yeah, so I think there's a big opportunity for an all-the-above energy sources, including nuclear. I've been trying to understand a little bit more about some of the small reactor. I'm excited about what I'm seeing with the small thorium modular reactors as well that are much safer, that take the byproducts of the other nuclear, like we take the byproducts from Wolf Creek as well. Was out in the Idaho lab in August as well, just looking at some of the research. So the baseline is what concerns me. So far, we don't have the technology to store the energy from wind and solar. I'm in favor of those as well. I think that they're disproportionately being subsidized, and it's going to keep driving the cost of our utilities up. So I do think that there's a role and a place for nuclear. Yes. Okay. Yes.
So what's your position on the taxes? I mean, it's a little offensive to me, my name is Cindy Sherman, that I pay more taxes than many of the CEOs and corporate leaders in this country. I don't think the Trump tax break really ended up doing what they had hoped it was going to do. I think there was a lot of corporate buyback of stock. I think there was a lot of wealth being amassed at the top. And I think this is an opportunity for us to get people to pay their fair share in these companies. We're talking about infrastructure. You know, a lot of these corporations are using these bridges and these roads, and in my mind, that's a business expense that they should factor into their business plan. What's your position on that?
So what's my position on the taxes? I'm against raising any taxes that I can see out there. So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which I fought so hard for in 2017, the average Kansas family kept $2,000 more of their hard-earned money. So bottom line, they kept $2,000 more. We cut corporate taxes. We cut corporate taxes, and despite cutting taxes, we had record income coming into the federal government. So we grew the economy, the best economy of my professional lifetime. We grew the economy despite lowering taxes. I think if we implement Joe Biden's tax plan, it's basically the total takeover of our lives by the federal government.
Amen.
Small businesses is what it's going to do. It's going to kill.
Yes, it will.
Kill small businesses as well. We're going to get rid of the stepped-up basis. He wants to start taxing dividend income at ordinary income levels. So, if they raise corporate taxes, that's going to be just passed on to the consumers. You think the Walmart and Procter & Gamble are going to keep that, and it's going to drive down your retirement plans values as well.
Yep.
Okay, very back.
Thank you. My name is Gary Ziegler. I'm a Douglas County resident. I'm a lifetime Kansan. I believe all Kansans are really great and productive people. I'm also a business owner here in Lawrence, Kansas. I have two questions. Number one, today, why are you here, and what is your takeaway from today? Second question is, what are we doing about getting people off of unemployment?
You know, the first time I sat down with Bob Dole, and my purpose was to ask him about a really tough vote I was going to ask him about. And I kind of just laid out the policy. He said, Roger, go back to Kansas. The Kansans will tell you how to vote on this bill if you just keep listening. So really, a good position, I think a good senator comes and listens. I typically know 6 weeks ahead when the polls are going to change. We've done, I think, about 60 of these town halls, so I think I'm constantly listening to people. I think my takeaway today, as it was last week, is that Kansans are angry.
Yeah.
And you can, and it gets you know, it's several things. It's not just one thing. I think that Kansans realize there's crisis after crisis after crisis. And I think many have concluded it's because of the policy of Joe Biden that's created.
Yes.
These as well, like typically 4 to 5 times. So I think that's a level of engagement that we've never seen before as well.
What about unemployment?
Unemployment. Well, we certainly can't keep paying people more to stay at home than to go back to work.
Amen.
I begged our governor to send that money back, not take it. I think way back in February, I was asking her to not do that. If people were working it right, a family of 4 could have made $108,000 a year from the federal government. So we're paying, as long as we're paying people more to stay at home than to go to work, it's just going to add to the bottleneck. It's going to add to inflate and create inflation as well.
Yep.
So I think it's all about, it is the policy, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, sir.
My name is Stephen Carter. Thank you so much for coming, Senator Marshall. Appreciate it. My question for you is that I know personally that when I get angry, I do not think clearly. So what are you doing? What do you see as your responsibility to help diffuse the anger that we're experiencing here in the United States right now?
Good question.
Yeah, I think keep listening, come to town halls, let people ventilate a little bit, and then try to be a voice of reason, a voice of hope as well. Try to speak the truth. But at the same time, I think if people are attacking my God-given constitutional rights, I got to stand up and fight as well.
Thank you.
My name's Paul Carter. I'm his brother.
Who's the smarter one?
And my question has to do with the preservation of democracy. So you asked at the beginning of the session about various problems. I'm absolutely very concerned about every issue that you raised there, but I'm also concerned about the state of American democracy, especially in the context of the continued challenges to the integrity of the 2020 election. And you know, people have a lot of different views on it. The fact is that one of the most conspicuous efforts to prove fraud was recently undertaken in Phoenix, where there, as you know, was a months-long, painstaking process propelled by the belief that the results in Maricopa County were fraudulent. And as we all know, the result of this effort, which was sponsored not by the state government, but by the Republican Party essentially, was that not only was there no fraud, but that the victory President Biden increased by 300 votes. 100 of new votes for him, 200 fewer votes for President Trump. So my question to you is, first of all, your own reaction to the results of the Arizona audit and what you think that means, but then more broadly, what do you think about now your personal view of the integrity of the 2020 election?
So my goal has always been to make it easier to vote, but harder to cheat.
Yeah.
So I want to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. You know, to your point, Hillary Clinton still thinks that she won the election. And I was in a room full of people last week that were still arguing about John F. Kennedy's election as well. So I think that's what history does. I've always been concerned about the integrity of the election. And my concern then and now is that 6 states broke their own laws or their own constitution when they started sending out unsolicited ballots and then collected the ballots afterwards. So my beef was never about how many ballots actually showed up there. My beef was that how they got there in the first place. So I'm glad to see that states are addressing it. This is not a federal issue. That would be against the Constitution to make this a federal issue. I get really upset when people want to get rid of voter ID. If California doesn't want integrity in their elections, I don't think I can do much about that. But Kansas has good elections that have integrity. And I think that's why it's so important that who our county clerks are, who our Secretary of State is, all those are important that add integrity. The people that are sitting there and checking the voter IDs is a big deal to me. And then there's little checkpoints in there as well, that they would do their own checks and balances after each day as well. So I think Kansas can be held out as a state that does it the right way. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Probably got time for one or two more as well. Okay, yes, ma'am, go
I'm
ahead.
kind of changing the subject, but I'm concerned about that young man, Colonel Schiller, that's been put in prison. And it sounds like I heard his parents' interview last night that they're thinking about keeping him there for life, and I feel he spoke up with what he felt. And I just wondered what your feeling is, what are the plans with him as far as you guys go?
Yes, sir, questions about Lieutenant Colonel Schiller, right?
Right.
So my office is working with several senators from the Armed Services Committee. We reached out to the Marine Force, the Marines on Friday. Kind of the same type of question, what's going on? Can you update us? We're waiting for that to come back. There are several videos out there, and I think there's a lot of concern. I'm going to call it the third video that he does when he's not in uniform. And if you haven't seen that, you should. I don't think that we want Congress micromanaging the Uniform Code of Justice, Military Justice, but he certainly deserves due process, and we're going to make sure that he gets due process.
Good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Haven't seen it in the congressional bills that are going through. We have a lot of fentanyl crossing the border, making its way all the way to the Midwest, killing a lot of kids. What's your take and what's being done?
Yeah, so his questions about fentanyl, it's absolutely an epidemic. You know, people want to, how are people dying from fentanyl? If you're taking, 10 or 12 Percocets to get high, if you take 1 or 2 fentanyls, you would die. It causes you to stop breathing. When the drug dogs sniff it, sometimes it kills the dogs. It's so strong, right? And it can be transported across the border very easily. Like they could put thousands of dollars worth in an axle of a car that's coming across. This is why we need border security. Our border patrol is so busy running a humanitarian services, they don't have the opportunity to stop all that. So I've been to the border 3 times. What the cartel does is they come and dump a bunch of women and children at point A. All the border patrol run to point A, and then they're about half a mile down the river going across point B with the drugs, and then using children there as human guinea pigs, as human mules as well. So we have to secure the border. It's that simple. I don't think there's no than securing the border for that, as well as human trafficking and controlling the infectious diseases coming across the border.
Congress does have the ability to control the border above and beyond what the president mandates. Are there actions being taken to fund the border patrol more, or what's actually happening?
No, I think with all due respect for my friends across the aisle, as long as Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have the gavels in their hand, that's not going to happen. They want this crisis. America needs to realize they can.
Yes.
Okay, probably ready for the last one. Young man wears a suit and tie. We'll recognize him here.
Thank you very much. I'm one of the voters who elected the position here, and glad to see you here today. What I'm seeing, we're talking about the border crisis and everything. There was a notice just this week on MSNBC that 400,000 more migrants are headed here. And we know that they are being relocated strategically to right-wing parts of the country, North Idaho, South Dakota, Montana, and other swing states. Can we expect anything from you and our other representatives here in Kansas to stop these migrants, because they are not going to vote Republican? You see your constituency here, the people who care, and we want to see you succeed here. Our predominantly white European descent.
Yeah, you should have been white national.
We're going to continue voting for you. So I think all of our best interest to stop migrants from being here.
Appreciate your comments. Certainly elections do have consequences, and one of the big consequences we're seeing is that we do now have an open border. I think that turns us back to the focus of the next election. Meanwhile, the White House has so much authority from allowing them across the border to not funding things properly, and then where they distribute them as well. I just don't see much more that we can do as well. Folks, I think we need to wrap it up, and I appreciate everybody coming. I do think we covered a lot of topics. I don't know if we had 15 or 20 people get to ask their questions, so I do appreciate it. I appreciate your enthusiasm. I still think that the United States of America is still this country on top of a hill with a bright beacon of hope for the rest of the world. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that my grandchildren have the same opportunities that I've had. There is anger out there. But I just want to reassure you that we share so many of the same common goals. We don't always agree on how to get there and the priorities, but I'm going to keep fighting for traditional Kansas values. Thank you for coming out this morning.